The First World War began when a fatal shot from a Belgian-made Browning pistol, smuggled across the border from Serbia, hit an Austro-Hungarian Archduke in Sarajevo in June 1914. To understand why this happened, a look into the tensions in the Balkans between Serbia and the Habsburg Empire is needed. After the Second Balkan War, Serbia had grown bolder in the knowledge that she enjoyed a treaty of protection with Russia. At the heart of this new confidence was a commitment to restoring Bosnian independence, reversing the annexation of 1908. Serbia's success in the war also emboldened Black Hand, a Serbian-based anti-Austrian nationalist secret society committed to pan-Slavism. This was seen by the Austrians as a terrorist group. In the spring of 1914, it was announced that the heir to the Austrian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, would make a state visit to Sarajevo in the early summer. Apis, the secretive leader of Black Hand, who Vienna had long suspected was a serving colonel in the Serbian army, immediately sensed an opportunity to strike at the heart of the Habsburg regime, and made plans to send 7 young Black Hand members across the border into Bosnia. Among these was the 19-year-old radical student Gavrilo Princip, who left Belgrade at the end of May. Once over the border into Bosnia, Princip moved from safe house to safe house with his fellow conspirators before his arrival in Sarajevo on June the 4th. There he met with others, already preparing the ground for events later in the month. The Archduke and his wife Sophie arrived in the Bosnian capital by train early in the morning before being driven into the city in a motorcade. But on their journey to their first appointment, a Black Hand operative was able to evade any security and throw a grenade at his open-top car. Bouncing off and exploding nearby, it was to injure about 20 Austrian officials and bystanders in the crowd. Franz Ferdinand, however, was uninjured, and although shaken, insisted defiantly on continuing with his official duties, delivering his planned speech at the town hall soon after. Having concluded his official duties, and obviously in a departure from his agreed itinerary, he then decided to visit the officers injured in the morning attack. So his cavalcade set off again, but took a wrong turn on the way to the hospital, heading up Franz Joseph Street by mistake. As a result, the Archduke's driver slowed and brought the car to a halt close to the Latin Bridge, realizing that he needed to turn around. However, by chance, this took place in front of Princip himself, who had stayed in the city after the morning's failed bombing. He was standing nearby, by Schiller's Cafe, as the driver carried out his maneuver, and quickly he took his chance. Rushing at the car, he fired 2 shots, with one hitting the Archduke in the neck, while the other fatally wounded Sophie in the abdomen. In the intense cauldron of tension and pressure that had been building in Europe since the beginning of the century, Austria's war on Serbia quickly drew in and activated the alliance system that had been building for the previous 2 decades. As a result, all of the great powers, except Italy, were at war within a week. Germany was the first into the fray, when reacting to orders issued in Moscow concerning mobilization, it declared war on Russia on the 1st of August. This turned a regional conflict in the Balkans into a Europe-wide war. German strategy in 1914 was based on a plan devised by Alfred von Schlieffen, the Kaiser's chief of the German General Staff, in 1905. The Schlieffen plan crucially argued that Germany could not expect to win an attritional war waged on 2 fronts. Stressing the need for speed, the plan argued that Russia would take some 6 weeks to fully mobilize, and France, Russia's ally in the West, should be dealt with first. The Schlieffen plan went on to conclude that since the common border between France and Germany was heavily defended, any attack should be launched on the right flank through neutral Belgium. In line with this, Germany declared war on France on the 3rd of August, and a day later, German troops drove deep into Belgium, attacking the heavily fortified city of Liège. Britain had treaty obligations with both France and Belgium, and was as a result dragged into the conflict, joining both Russia and France in their battle with the Central Powers. A general war, which had nearly broken out on a number of occasions in the previous years, had at last arrived. Liège soon fell, and Brussels followed suit within 3 weeks. Stories of German atrocities in Belgium further inflamed public opinion in France and Britain, where recruiting stations were set up to deal with the thousands eager to enlist. Further to the south and east, stiff resistance initially thwarted German advances, but after this initial stalemate, the German army went on to record a number of early victories. In particular, it succeeded in driving back French forces at Mons on the 23rd of August. The Schlieffen Plan, which depended on the successful advance through Belgium and northern France before encircling Paris from the less protected west, seemed to be going to plan. The war against Russia, though, had begun less successfully, with early Tsarist victories in both Austria and Prussia persuading German commanders that its army in the east needed strengthening. Consequently, early Russian successes were soon reversed, with important German victories in the battles of Tannenberg in the last week of August and at the Masurian Lakes in mid-September. These proved a huge blow to the Tsar and his commanders in the field, who were already arguing among themselves. Russia was by far the most economically backward of the great powers, and in both battles, vast amounts of equipment and arms and men were lost. In retrospect, Russia was never able to make up for these early losses, and it was to lurch from crisis to crisis over the next few years, until Lenin took the newly proclaimed communist state out of the war in 1917. The main strategic importance of the early Russian victories in August had been that it forced a watering down of the Schlieffen Plan in the west. The transfer of troops to the Eastern Front forced German commanders to cancel the planned western sweep around Paris to the west, forcing them instead to push southwards. This was not a lesson missed by Hitler, who 26 years later ordered his generals to make the capture of Paris their main military priority. In early August 1914, the young Austrian who was to lead Germany in the Second World War was in Munich, celebrating the declaration of the First World War. He was to volunteer on the 3rd of August, the day after Germany declared war on Russia and just before the invasion of Belgium. In response to the German advances east of Paris, the French leadership ordered its armies to pull back from the borders of Alsace and Lorraine, where it had concentrated since the opening days of the war. Meanwhile, further north, fighting had led to heavy British and French casualties at Verdun and Mons. With German confidence high, it seemed that an early Allied victory was imperative if France was to be saved. That moment would come between the 6th and the 12th of September with the Battle of the Marne, just 30 miles from Paris, where the impetus of the German advancement was stopped. Clearly, the main reason why the Germans abandoned the central strategy of the Schlieffen Plan and did not push to encircle Paris was the transfer of troops to the Eastern Front. However, another lies with the decision made by General Kluck, the commander of the army's right flank. In late August, he was made aware that the Second Army to his left needed support. So without consulting General Moltke, the Kaiser's chief of staff, he gave orders for his forces to march southeast in support, marching east of Paris. Kluck believed that this made good military sense, unaware of the French decision to withdraw troops from the German border. In the meantime, Marshal Joseph Joffre, the French commander-in-chief, Papa Joffre, the saviour of Paris, began organising the French response. As this played out, he could see that Kluck had exposed the German army right flank, and he determined to make his move. The Schlieffen Plan was a bold move to knock France out of the war by taking Paris. When this did not happen in early September, German generals realized that the Schlieffen Plan had failed and that they would have to organize the German Imperial Army to fight an extended war on two flanks. As the fighting raged, what had begun as a local Balkan dispute a week before had quickly exploded into a general European war. The tinderbox had been lit by the shots fired in Sarajevo, and Europe was at war. As Edward Grey, Britain's Foreign Secretary, is reported to have said, "The lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime."